Okay, so today I'm going to do a quick video and I'm going to talk about gun talent synergy, what I believe to be the best 10 gun talents that you can look for and pair together in order to create a really effective weapon and build overall. I got a few requests for this. I'm not actually going to do a top 10 in terms of ranking 1 through 10. I'm just going to say as a bundle, I think that these 10 talents are something you should always be looking for on your weapons, and that they have a really big impact on the gameplay itself, and that they are better than the other alternatives. Now, within this list, some talents are better than others, that's for sure. And, you know, if you feel that I've left off something that's super critical, or there's another talent that's much better than these and should be on the list or in this group, go ahead and put it down in the comments. But, you know, make sure to put in some information as well. If you feel like, you know, I left it out and it's really good for a variety of reasons, then list what those reasons are. Don't just say, you idiot, you forgot X, Y, and Z. I'm going to delete comments like that, or a moderator will, because unless you're contributing something useful to the discussion, then it doesn't have a place here. But, you know, if you're putting information, that's really great. I love to expand my perspective, and hopefully I can, you know, develop some synergistic combos based on feedback as well. I love to expand my knowledge of the game. So I'm going to get right into it and start off right now with Adept, okay? I guess I'll do this in alphabetical order. That seems to make the most sense, since I'm not actually doing, you know, a 1 through 10 in terms of overall value. But I believe that Adept is a really good talent to look for, especially when paired with something like an SMG or any gun that you're going to get a lot of critical hit damage out of. Using a skill increases critical hit chance for a duration of 5 seconds. Percentage varies, you know, based on the gun, based on the gear score and things like that. This is a really cool skill. I like this a lot. Now, especially in the third slot. A lot of these talents are only good if they are in the third slot, especially for DPS firearms builds, because the third slot is free. You don't actually have to have the main stats to activate the talent. So a lot of these are actually third slot specific. Adept might be one of those. You know, you can activate it. Some hybrid builds can activate this in the first or second slot. But I feel like it's most valuable in the third slot. And it's a very good skill. I like it a lot. So that's something that pairs very well with SMGs. Gives you critical hit chance, and it's very nice. So moving on, Competent. Now, I feel right here that this is the best talent to have in the third slot of any of the talents out there. That's my strong belief. Now, provides increased weapon damage for 10 seconds after the use of a skill. The damage increase percentage varies. This, I feel, is super valuable because you're always going to be proccing this. You're going to be spamming skills left and right, whether it's your heal, your pulse, your sticky bomb if you're a tactician. For whatever reason, you are going to have a skill off of cooldown very frequently, especially due to the amount of, you know, cooldown reduction mechanics that are in the game. You know, you can use a consumable and get 30% decreased cooldowns. You can use triage repeatedly on your teammates and just get decreased cooldowns. There's a lot of different, you know, synergistic skills that can actually pair with that as well. If you are running a skill build, things that I'll get to later. So there's a lot of ways that you're going to be decreasing your cooldowns and popping these skills constantly, so you can almost keep Competent active 100% of the time, if done correctly. This is what I believe to be the most effective third slot skill, or talent, I should say. And I think that everyone should be looking for this whenever possible. One thing that's really nice is on a G36, just as a side note, if you re-roll Focused from the talent that it comes with, Focus, where if both skills are up, you gain 13.5% increased damage, usually on the ones that I get, to Competent. That means that when you use a skill, you're getting 13.5% increased damage for 10 seconds. So what that does is it effectively turns the meter inflation aspect of the G36 right on its head, and actually makes you stronger than what your meter is going to show, which I love having happen. I love going into an encounter and thinking, okay, my meter DPS is only this, and then having it perform like it was something much higher, and just being really, you know, happy with the results. So I like that a lot. Competent gets an absolute 10 out of 10 in my book. Moving on to Deadly, that's the next one. This is a really great talent with SMGs. Now, this used to be possibly the best talent in the game, in my eyes, before the patch 1.3 nerf to SMGs. Which, you know, it's not specifically a nerf, it's a change, but I believe it did end up being a nerf. Without the critical hit chance on SMGs, Deadly is not as good, but it is still quite good. You know, if you can get your critical hit chance very high, especially with an SMG, but with an assault rifle too, or even with a marksman rifle, you're going to want Deadly. Deadly performs very well when it's stacked on top of an already high critical hit damage multiplier, or on top of a really high headshot damage multiplier, and also pairs extremely well with Brutal. I actually don't have the perfect alphabetical order here. I realize Brutal should be up here right after Adept, but I'll talk about that later. So Deadly pairs extremely well with Brutal, but on its own, it does function quite well, especially on marksman rifles and SMGs, or any build that is prioritizing critical hit damage or critical hit chance. The higher your critical hit chance, the more bullets are going to actually proc, and get the deadly effect, and as a result, it's going to be more valuable. Deadly is extremely easy to activate, has a relatively low firearms roll for the value of it in my eyes, so you don't really need to roll it in the third slot or anything like that, especially on a DPS firearms build. You're going to be able to activate it no matter where it is, so that's a nice bonus to Deadly as well. Determined. Okay, so this is a third slot talent as well. I like it quite a bit. It's not one of the best overall, but it does make the list. It does make the cut in my eyes. Slightly reduces skill cooldowns whenever the player earns a kill. Now the percentage does vary, but this can be very effective in the third slot, especially for skill power builds when you're getting these kills and recharging your skills much faster. This is going to pair very nicely with triage. You're going to be able to get your skills back faster and then help your team get their skills back faster. It's just a stacking effect that has a lot of great bonuses to it. This is not one of, this isn't a game-changing talent, I would say. If you have this on your gun, it's a nice boost, but it's not something where you're going to say, okay, well, that right there, makes or breaks the gun. It's just something that's a good thing to have in the third slot. If you reroll something, if you have a gun that has that in the third slot, you're free to reroll the other ones without worrying too much and saying, well, I have a dead talent in the third slot, because you will get use out of this. It may not be glaringly obvious, but, when you're in a hybrid environment like the Dark Zone, farming, things like that, you're PvPing, you're fighting other players, and you're getting these NPC kills, the value, it is going to stack up quite nicely. So you are going to notice an increase in effectiveness in your build. So it's a really nice talent. Moving on to Ferocious, increases damage against elite and named enemies. This makes the list for one specific reason, and that is that there is no place in the game as of right now where there is a dedicated PvP zone. There is always NPCs. They will always be around you. They will always be hitting you, and they stack up to have a lot of damage. So no matter what content you're playing, Ferocious can have value. Some people may argue that this shouldn't have made the cut, especially if you're approaching this from a PvP standpoint. And if you are strictly adhering to PvP standards, then yeah, Ferocious isn't really a talent you want on your gun. But it's something that I believe is valuable, and also for the majority of the game. If you look at the game as a whole, Ferocious is a very nice talent to have, especially because at the top tiers of play, a lot of the enemies are going to be elite and named. So, you will encounter purples, but most of the time they're going to be yellows. You're going to get that bonus effect from Ferocious, and you're going to notice it when you're actually farming PvE content, or if you're in the Dark Zone, you have to melt a squad of LMB that, ran up on you guys as you were PvPing. You are going to notice the effect, and it is very valuable, so that's why it's made the list in my eyes. Fierce is a very nice talent. I would say it's probably going to be something you want in the third slot due to the requirements. I don't remember exactly what they are, but they are a little bit higher than other talents. They're not easy to activate like Deadly is, where, if you get it on a gun, it's pretty much going to be active if you're running a DPS build no matter what, unless you're running a very strange build, in which case I would like to hear about it. So Fierce does help, provides a bonus to critical hit chance. Now this is always going to be active. This is not a conditional bonus. I like that a lot. So you're always going to be getting this effect, not only against players, but against NPCs. And it stacks up very nicely with SMGs, marksman rifles, anything that uses critical hit damage or critical hit chance as one of its main components to be effective. So Fierce is a very solid talent. It makes the cut in my eyes, and it's really nice in the third slot as well. Moving down to Vicious. When your character is at full health, the weapon received increased critical hit chance. Now, I think this is a severely underrated talent. A lot of people don't like this, and they try and roll it off their gun, and they claim that it's inflationary and all this different stuff. I don't believe that. I think that Vicious, in particular, is extremely valuable. It gives you a large boost to critical hit chance, much more than Fierce does. I think in the vicinity of 5% more. Up to, you can roll in the 13.5% range is what I've seen. So Vicious at full health, and this means whenever you're in an overshield as well, when you have overdose and things like that, whether it's from your teammate or yourself, you're going to be at full health and have this overheal, which is more effective than the base health pool. That is going to be a super effective thing that, you're getting this critical hit chance the entire time. So when you start a PvP encounter and you start fighting enemy agents, you're going to have this critical hit chance, which allows you to dictate the pace of the fight if used correctly. If you're getting this large increase to critical hit chance, paired on top of Savage and things like that, it's very easy with Vicious to meet the critical hit cap of 60% without a pulse for the beginning of the fight. And that's going to allow you to dish a lot more damage. Now, yes, if you start to take damage, you're going to go and you're going to lose that bonus. But at the same time, all you have to do is pop a heal. If you can multi-proc your heal, especially when you're triaging your teammates and things like that, running in and out repeatedly, you're going to have a full overshield for most of the duration of that fight. And Vicious is going to be active more than it's not. So Vicious 100% makes the cut. in my eyes, for the top 10 best talents, weapon talents that is, and I really won't even consider removing this from my list. But if you think, if you can explain and articulate in a really, well thought out way why Vicious isn't as good as I think it is, I would actually love to hear that. When I do change my perspective based on other people's feedback, it's a welcome thing. But most of the time, I have not heard actual legitimate reasons why Vicious isn't good, because the overheal aspect in my eyes is just so important. So moving on from Vicious, we have Responsive. Now this is one arguably of the best talents in the game. Some people think it is, some people think it's not. Buffs weapon damage by 5% whenever the player fires an enemy from 10 meters or closer away. Now that's actually the wrong percentage. That is actually, I think, 10% now, or 13.5% on some guns. This is from a while ago, these statistics right here. I pulled them down off of a page that I, was helping work on a while back, a few patches ago. So that actually slipped through. But to clarify, that's actually going to be 13.5% on the highest tier of weapons, and then it's a varying percentage on the way down in gear score. So it's much more than 5%. Responsive is a great talent, and it's very, very good when paired with Competent, okay? So if you're within 10 meters and you've used a skill, you're actually going to have 27% increased base damage to that target. It's very synergistic. It's going to pair very well with Competent. And it also pairs very well with things like Reckless. Any other percent weapon damage bonuses are going to pair extremely well with Responsive. For most of the PvP encounters that you're going to get into in the game, you're going to have Responsive active. For a lot of the PvE content as well. Unless you're actually, a significant distance away using a marksman rifle, you're probably going to have Responsive active, even if you're in cover, more like 6 or 7 meters away seems to be the average, depth when you're fighting NPCs even. You do get quite close to them, and you do have Responsive active most of the time. So it's a very, very good talent, definitely deserving of being on this, or in this grouping, I should say. Brutal, one of the best talents in the game, in my eyes. Overall damage dealt with headshots is increased by X% with the gun. This is a non-conditional bonus. This does not rely on getting a critical strike. This does not rely on having a skill active or off cooldown or anything like that. This is just unconditional all the time. You get a large chunk of headshot damage. With the nerf to sentries, Brutal has become even more important. They took 20% of the sentry bonus and they moved it over to the 5-piece. So now you're only getting 10% bonus headshot damage with 2-piece sentry instead of 30. With that change, Brutal became even more valuable. The bonus headshot damage is a really integral part of these new shotgun builds, where, if you get that headshot, they're typically pairing Responsive and Brutal with maybe Deadly, maybe Competent, something else with percent weapon damage, who knows. I haven't actually made a functional shotgun build that really, dominates players yet, but I'm on my way to doing that, so don't worry, it's coming. But Brutal, it's very important to have paired with Deadly as well, because if you do pair Brutal and Deadly, that's a super good combo, especially on like an SMG or something like that, because then you're getting this bonus base damage to headshots, which is then, plugged into your critical hit multiplier, and it turns out to just be a huge critical hit headshot when you can land it. So it's very nice. Brutal, definitely one of the best talents, best gun talents in the game. Whenever you get that on a gun, I would take a longer look at the gun and say, okay, can I make this work? Can I re-roll one of these talents to something else? Where did it roll? Did Brutal roll in the first, second, third slot? Who knows? Brutal is very easy to activate as well. It does take a significant portion of firearms. Excuse me, I actually have a bit of a cold, so my voice is a little bit, hoarse today. But Brutal pairs very well with Deadly and takes a little bit more firearms than Deadly does to activate. So it does take some firearms, but if you are a DPS build, you're almost definitely going to have that covered. The only problem is, if you're on a super tanky build, activating Brutal might actually be a challenge, but it's fairly easy. Even if you run almost all stamina pieces, you can pretty much activate Brutal with your mod slots, using firearms mods with like skill power or whatever you want to as a secondary attribute. But Brutal can be activated quite easily that way. Then down to Skilled. Now, Skilled is a third talent slot on almost every build, on almost every weapon, but it's a super nice one. I actually had Skilled on my my AUG before patch 1.3, and I liked it a lot. I actually, loaded into the menu screen here, but this is not going to change the fact that I'm just talking about talents right now. Skilled is super nice when recharging your signature. So headshot kills with the weapon increase your signature skill by X percentage. Now, signature skills have something interesting to note about them. They are not actually a skill cooldown. They specifically made two different mechanics in the game. They're not a signature skill cooldown. It's going to increase signature skill resource. Now, the difference between a cooldown and a resource is when you use a skill, that skill goes on cooldown. There's a timer that's ticking down to then, give you that skill back. Okay, so decreasing cooldowns means that you're decreasing that timer. That's a whole specific set of mechanics. Signature skill resource is something else. People think that triage works with your signature skill. It does not. Okay, triage does not work with your signature skill. It does not have an effect. You get a percentage back for your signature skill when you headshot an enemy anyways, but with skilled, you're going to get a very large chunk. Okay, so when you headshot an enemy, you're going to notice a giant jump in your signature skill resource as it recharges. Alright, so the resource, the difference between a cooldown and a resource is that this is actually recharging. You start from 0 and you recharge in percentage amounts back to 100%, and then you can pop your signature again. So skilled is a super valuable talent in the 3rd slot, because anytime you get a headshot kill, you're going to be recharging your signature, and then you can pop it again. You can actually pop it, if you could pop your signature one time in 10 minutes with skilled and, an abundance of enemy NPCs, you can actually pop it closer to 7 times in that 10 minutes. So it's a really valuable skill. You get a lot of utility out of it, especially it works in the Dark Zone, it works for PvP, and it's right up there with competent for value in terms of the 3rd slot talent. So that's going to do it. If you have any feedback on what you think of these talents, or if you think there's another one that's better, synergistic combos that you think would work very well together, go ahead and post those down below the description in a comment. Big thank you to all my supporters. I'm sorry I didn't get to this sooner. This was actually requested a few times, and I really hope this had some helpful information. The channel is growing amazingly. I could not be happier, and overall, it's been a more positive experience than I ever could have thought. So thank you to everyone supporting. Thank you to everyone who made the channel move. We've actually surpassed our old channel, so we're up and away now, and it's just really going well. So I'm going to cut it there. As always, thank you for supporting. Oh, and a shameless plug. We actually have the t-shirt that we offered at 2,000 subscribers. I think it's a really cool design, and the goal is to sell 75, and we really need to sell some more before we print them. There's going to be, they're going to be up for another 7 days. So if you like those t-shirts, please order one for a friend. I think they're really cool. I did my best designing it, so hopefully it's something you would want to wear. Big wings across the back, and the UE crest and symbol. So thank you again to my supporters. As always, have a nice day.